Well, okay, welcome to the next 12 minutes of misery, and I am your host, Race Ready from Reddit. And today we are still talking about shit, great engines in our circle track engine lineup. The first one in line to go is the weakest one, GM602. We've dialed in, I believe, that one already, but we're just gonna go through the numbers to make sure that everything is accurate. And let's go. Let's open up our Crate Engines GM website, Chevrolet.com. Let's open Paint and pull up the calculations from last video if I still have them. Come on, calculations. Here you are. Whew. Wish you smoked as much as I did before you do these videos. Then you'll understand. Anyway, torque 1. We're gonna leave torque 1 for a little later. For GM602, I'm gonna leave it at 90 psi, but we'll experiment with torque 1. This will also affect outcome of torque 3 and like the shape of the curve in a little bit, not by much. However, that's for the later video. And now 3800 RPM is the RPM. I'm gonna check it in green color just to make sure that we went over that value. I'm not inputting decimals into torque profiles just for the sake of it, trying to keep the whole number going. So 170 will be the test number. 5400 RPM, all of that stuff is correct. We've done that in the last video. 146 psi is torque 3, yada yada yada. Plus minus 1 psi, once again, is a tunable amount at least, because it doesn't go smaller than that. Let's go to Chevrolet.com, look at our circle track package with 3 crate engines available directly from Chevy, CT350, aka GM602. We have all the mechanical dimensions of the engine available in front of us right here, so conveniently right on the same website as the torque curve. And we're looking for engine stroke. Engine stroke is 3.48 inches. And cylinder displacement, cubic inches of displacement, Chevy 350 right there, check it in green. Obviously, it's a 8-cylinder with old school 1 intake valve and push rod design, whatever, who knows what that is. Intake valve size 194. I've been looking at so many intake valve sizes, I know them by memory now, and this one is authentic Chevy valve size 194. It's kind of small, not a big valve compared to some other ones. However, we are almost done with our GM602. A couple of values I will outline in red, and those are for us to look at later in part 4 of this video. I will kill this motherfucker that is calling me right now, spoiling my video. Yes, got a call. Anyway, oil cooling, water cooling, I'm gonna mark it in blue. The bigger the number, the more cooling you get, and so on and so forth. Same with gears. But the values in red we'll talk about them in part 4 of this video. Part 1 of this month is almost finished. This phone call is messing with my mind. It's really hard to talk, comment, and have a phone call in the back, but I'm trying. Save it, keep it as current format, and as you see, the colors don't save when you do that. That's why I opened it again to make sure there was no color, so I saved it in the correct format, and I will see you guys in part 2. Okay, let's go. Part 2 here. Bear with me. CT400, second engine in the lineup. A little better than CT350 in power. We're going to mechanical dimensions, conveniently available from the manufacturer's website. Woo! The next profile, GM604. Let's open that shit up. Torque 1. As I said before, torque 1, we're gonna deal with it later. I will put this at 100 right there. You can see. Let's type that in. Torque 1 at 100 psi. But that's a value that we will be playing around with to shape our torque curve later on. However, yeah, let me make that in yellow. We're gonna come back to it. Okay. Next, RPM 2. This way, this one is different from the first one, so we actually have to dial in the whole thing. 4600 RPM is when we're making the maximum torque, or the maximum power actually, not horsepower but power. Anyway, 175 psi, you can see a little bit higher number than CT350, but just by a little bit. It's the RPM that make a huge difference, because this engine's spinning at about 800 RPM higher than the other one, as well as 200 RPM more on the max horsepower. 5600 RPM is when we are making our maximum horsepower as advertised, and that translates to 163 BMEP. Boom, 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 right there. Let's dial that in, mark that in green, and we'll be good. Okay, so the power values are dialed in. Now we go to engine mechanical dimensions, and we're looking for stroke, and it's a CID, and it's the same as before. It's a Chevy 350. Obviously 8-cylinder, 1 valve per head, yada yada yada. That's all going in green automatically. So we're correct in there. Next one in line, intake valve size, or basically the intake valve size in your cylinder head. That's the only value that we have that's representing the cylinder head in a way. For some reason doesn't let me type in decimals in OpenOffice, but it should be okay. So 2-inch valves on CT400, a little bit bigger valve, a little bit more air that the engine is capable of breathing, and therefore slightly better stats and more RPM that this engine is spinning. Simply, very simple explanation. It probably has better cylinder heads than the CT350. That is what's up. Okay, maximum recommended RPM is 5800, but we will be messing with redline, max power, and few other settings in part 4 of this video, as well as cooling, water, and gears are gonna be stock for now. Okay, so here we have dialed in our prototype CT400. We're almost close. Part 2 is almost about to be ready. Bear with me for 2 more short segments, and we'll get through it. Alright, we're almost there. We're almost done. Part 3, last engine, CT525, the fastest one, the biggest one in the lineup, your typical super late model engine. Let's take a look at it. Scroll down to mechanical dimensions, which are conveniently available from the manufacturer's website. Anyway, torque 1. I will set torque 1 to 110 psi just in case, just for testing. So it's a difference between 10 psi between each engine, just for testing, just to give it a little bit different of a kick in the beginning. But that's the number that you'll be working with to shape your torque curve, and we'll come back to that one later. Next one, maximum torque RPM 5200 RPM, which is very simple, plain as day. Let's dial that in, and we are making at that point 191 BMEP. That's the maximum. That's getting close to our CTS engine right there that is running at 210. So it's a pretty good engine, the CT525. It's technologically advanced, so to say. However, what can I say? The RPM is what makes the difference. CTS runs at 9,000 and this one runs at 6,600, making convenient 170 BMEP at torque 3, which we're gonna dial in, yada yada yada. All this stuff is very boring. I just want to make a detailed dial in video. Soon enough we're gonna get to shorter, more informative, more fun videos, and hopefully maybe even get into the game. Okay, so this engine is a little bigger. It's 376 cubic inches, which you can see, with a little bit longer stroke at 362, and much bigger intake valve for much better breathing, so to say, at 2.165 inches. It's even bigger than our CTS valve. There you go. Wow. Boom. Damn. Yay. Anyway, red line values, peak power, and all that garbage, as we said, I will cover in the last segment of this video. Other than that, we're done with our CT525. All that has been checked out. We're gonna save it, keep current format, then open the file one more time to make sure that it's saved in the current format and the colors actually don't stay. If you open it again and you see your colors, you fucked up somewhere. Yeah, so the colors don't save when you keep current format. And here comes the last part. And well, here we are, the last bonus part, the bonus segment, part 4, because we only have 3 engines, so part 4 is extra. And we'll be talking about red line, peak power, a couple of other values as well. That 12 and 18 numbers, to me, I believe it's a machine language that gives an instruction. If that equals 12, that means the engine is used during qualifying session. And if it says 18, that means that the engine is used during a race session. As you could see, the physics editor creator had slight idea about that, even though he put a couple of question marks next to it. I don't mess with those values. They're the same all throughout all engines. Same as this 19, which a physics editor creator had no idea what that means, but each one, every single engine in the series has it at 19. So if you don't change it, you just remain within the papyrus stuff, and I don't mess with that number either. Which leaves us with the two, one and another one very important and another one not so much important numbers. I'll start with peak power, and you see a couple of question marks right there by the editor creator. He wasn't sure if it is peak power indeed. Why wasn't he sure? Because if you set this fucker to 10,000, you're not gonna get 10,000 horsepower. If you set it to 100, you're not gonna get 100 horsepower. Literally, messing with this field produced no evidence of changing anything. So I really don't know. We're gonna mess with it, look at the telemetry, and try to run again and try to scope through this and try to find any kind of proof that that number matters. Maybe my alternate theory on that, it could be the CFM of the carburetor. It kinda almost matches. Those of you that know what a carburetor CFM is, look at the chart matrix. We're looking at about, what is it, like Chevy 350, 358, and the RPM. Yeah, but you see the numbers match the number, like we're within similar looking numbers as the CFM flow of the carburetor. So maybe that's what that value is. But if you change it, it should change something as well. The fact is that messing with this number does not affect anything in game. I wanted to cover that before we go any farther. I will put this value down because it doesn't really matter. In my opinion right now, as far as I know, let's go to red line. And red line, it's not just your mechanical red line to where your engine cannot breathe or spin any faster. It is your electronic red line. And by electronic red line, I mean you have a rev limiter chip installed. You saw some pictures. You can research on your own. Those that know what's up know exactly what is going on. In your rule book, usually they'll tell you for each track, each series, what the allowed red line is, and that's the type of limiter chip that you are going to install on your engine. However, for testing and in NASCAR 2003, to show you guys, 5700 RPM would be a proper red line for this engine because it has like plus 300 RPM on the original physics. However, right there, maximum recommended, well, that's not for racing, is 55. So 57 matches right there. We're right decently, should assume that somewhere around 5700 RPM could be the red line. I could set it to 64 because I've seen some rule books that set the rev limiter to that. Anyway, each rule book is going to have a specific setting of what your electronic rev limiter should be. However, for testing, this time I will set the limiter at 12,000, which is most likely, fuck this phone call, motherfucker. Anyway, never mind, this was kind of important phone call. Anyway, we're gonna leave the red line super high at 12,000 RPM. Should have been like 20,000, doesn't really matter. Anyway, we'll see some amazing footage. When that happens, we will actually see how far the engine can run on its own without limitations. And you'll see that they're all different, and NASCAR 2003 is a great game that calculates all that kind of crap. See you guys later. Bye.